In this lab, you're going to be wiring and determining the function of a bunch of different integrated circuit chips. So you're going to be working with the chips 7400, 7402, 04, 08, 7432, and 7486. You're going to wire each one of these and determine what kind of logic gate is on each chip. Now keep in mind that each chip that you're going to be working with is going to have multiple copies of the same logic gate. The first chip that you're going to be working with is the 7400 chip, so grab one of those and plug it into the breadboard. Now I've already drawn in that this 7400 is a NAND chip. Now notice it has 4 copies of NAND gates. So when you actually wire this thing, let me just talk about that again, make sure that you run pin 14 here to power, and pin 7 that needs to go to ground. I guess I could draw a little ground triangle there. And power is usually represented with a T, like that. So make sure you power and ground your chip, and then to test it out, you will run A and B to a switch. Now on your breadboard, you have a bunch of switches. They're in fact labeled SW1 through SW8, doesn't matter. So I'll run A and B to a couple of switches. I don't know, let's say SW1 on your breadboard, and let's say SW2, doesn't really matter. And I will run the output labeled Y to some LED on your board. And on your board, you have LEDs labeled A through H. So I don't know, let's run this to, that's supposed to be a little light there. Let's run this to LED 1. It really doesn't matter. I'm sorry, to LED A. It makes no difference which LED. So, and then to test the chip, you will go through every possible combination of switches, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1, and you should find that the output is on for every input except for the last one. In other words, when the 2 switches are up, the output will be off, and hopefully you should recognize that that is a NAND gate. Again, I did this one for you, and then you're supposed to draw in, I would like you to draw in all of the logic gates and the connections. Now notice you really just have to test the first gate on the chip, because as I said, all of the chips that you're going to be working with will contain multiple copies of the same logic gate. So in other words, if A1 and B1 output Y1, if this is a NAND gate, you can assume that A2 and B2 and Y2, right, this is another logic gate. This is also a NAND gate, and as well as where am I? A3 and B3 obviously output to Y3, that's a NAND gate, and finally A4 and B4 will also output to Y4, that's another NAND gate. So just to be clear, this integrated circuit contains 4 copies, 4 different NAND gates, and all the chips you're going to be working with will have the same type of gate. But even though I've drew this one in for you, still wire this one and test it and make sure it works as you expect. And then we'll just take one quick look at the next one, and hang in there. So next you're going to grab another chip, a 7408. Now you don't know what the function of this chip is, but you're going to wire it up exactly the same as you did with the 7400 chip. You're going to power and ground it, and then you're going to test what kind of logic gate is on this chip. So again, you'll run A1 and B1 to switches, Y1 you'll run to an LED, go through the truth table, what is the output, and then determine, you know what the chip functions are now. Is it an AND gate, an OR gate, a NOR gate, what kind of gate it is. Write that down here, and then fill in whatever logic gate it is. And again, there's going to be 4 copies of the same logic gate. So draw them all in on your chip, and when you're done, go to the next chip, the 7432, and so on. And do this for all 6 chips. And again, the goal is to figure out the function of each of the 6 integrated circuit chips that I gave you. So hopefully you'll make it through the lab, and pay close attention to the connections and make sure, because I think one of the chips actually connects a little bit differently. So again, just pay close attention as you go through the lab. I know you can do it, and there's a couple of students here as well to assist you.